Hello and welcome to another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marschik. Today's program is called Pushing Exercises, and in this program I'm going to be talking about a variety of different exercises that you can perform that involve pushing. Now, what do I mean by pushing? Pushing to me is anything for the chest. If you're pushing your body away, say from the floor, from a wall, or from a barbell, or from a dumbbell, or even tubing or a Swiss ball or medicine balls, anything that involves pushing your body away from either a fixed object or from an object that's moving like a barbell or a dumbbell. Pressing exercise typically involve overhead movement. So today's program again is on pushing. A lot of chest exercises that people do tend to revolve around, say, a bench press or a machine press that you find on a piece of equipment at a club. There are a lot of additional exercises that you could be performing if you want to develop strength in your upper body, your chest musculature, your shoulder musculature, and your tricep musculature. But I want to talk about the safe way to perform all those different exercises. One of the things that you have to consider before you do any type of a pushing exercise or a pressing exercise overhead is your shoulders. And shoulder health is really important. And I'm going to teach you a couple of things that you can do to preserve the integrity of your shoulder joint throughout a lifetime so that you can continue exercising. And one of the things that I like to use as a tool is a lacrosse ball to do soft tissue work in my pec major and my pec minor. The pec minor is a very small muscle here that attaches to your coracoid process, which is part of your scapula that wraps underneath here. And your pec minor, when it becomes really tight and restricted from doing too many pushing exercises, especially bench press type exercises that tend to really tighten the pec minor and causes your shoulder to internally rotate too much. One of the things associated with that is bicep tendonitis. So your long head of your bicep tendon comes right out of the bicipital groove here in the shoulder, and a lot of time that becomes problematic for people. So how do you go about protecting your shoulders, creating healthier shoulders, but still allowing yourself the opportunity to do pushing exercises? Well, one of the things you can do is really focus on releasing the pec minor and doing soft tissue work. So to do that, you'll take a lacrosse ball. I like lacrosse ball better than, say, a racquetball or a handball because it's harder. This is a few dollars. You can find it at your local sporting goods store or order it online. But the pec minor is up high here. And when the pec minor is tight, it tips your scapula back here and causes your shoulder to internally rotate. So to release this, you can take the ball and you want to roll into it. I like to use it against the wall. You can also do this on the floor. But find any little trigger points. It's higher in your chest. It's not lower. Once you discover one of those little hot spots or sore points, then just dig in. Press in and hold that, say, for a 5 to 10 count. Now I typically start with my pec minor. I'll do both sides to release that area, and then I'll move around to my scapulohumeral muscles in the back and into my rotator cuff region, which, again, very important that you release this area to create really fluid movements within your shoulder capsule. If your shoulder capsule is too tight, especially the posterior capsule, it's going to create some problems in your shoulders, and it's not going to allow you to do any type of a pushing exercise for too long without pain. Same idea. You want to find these sore spots along the scapulohumeral border where your lats are, where your rotator cuff region is. You can support your arm like so or move your arm in various positions. But again, once you find one of those sore spots, and I've got one right here, right now, I'm going to dig in, hold that for about a 5 to 10 count until it releases. The pain will dissipate somewhat and disperse, and the tissue will lengthen and give you a little bit more freedom of movement. But it's amazing how much freer my shoulders move after just hitting both sides, spending about 5 minutes a total, 2.5 minutes each shoulder, addressing that with a lacrosse ball. So I typically start with that. So if I'm ever assessing somebody in a training session when I do a movement screen on someone, I usually take them through a series of exercises to assess range of motion in their shoulders. And 9 times out of 10, most people have a very tight pec minor. Their scapulohumeral muscles along here, this region, are usually really tight and restricted. And just simply by releasing those areas, it really gives them more range of motion and makes them feel better so that they can exercise more efficiently. All right, so that's a basic exercise that everyone can do, getting a lacrosse ball. The next thing I'll do, if say for somebody who's elderly, is I'll check to see what type of stability they have through their shoulders. So I'll either place them against the wall and see if they can support their body weight without their scapular winging, or I'll put them on the floor if they're a little bit stronger. And I'll have them time this, say, for a set amount of time, 30 seconds or a minute. And if your scapula starts to wing, which means it starts to poke out, then chances are your shoulder stabilizers aren't strong enough or healthy enough. So I'll typically have somebody go through a phase of, say, corrective exercises to shore up the serratus anterior, which is one of the muscles in your back that helps to pull the scapula into the rib cage, which will create better movement, scapular humeral rhythm, when you're doing a pressing type exercise. So if you're not very strong, or if you have unstable shoulders, I've got a 90-year-old client that was just here a short while ago that he can't do any type of a pushing movement other than against a wall or a barbell. So I'm going to give you a couple of basic exercises. If you're older, deconditioned, you can actually use the wall as a tool and simply lower yourself down, your forehead down, and push away. You want to make sure you push away completely. So this is a very basic pushing exercise that you can do if you're someone who isn't particularly fit or strong, or if you have, say, unhealthy shoulders that don't allow you to add much of a load. So this is really safe. Say, try anywhere between as many as you can, maybe 6, 8, 10, 12 reps with good form. A couple of sets, and that's going to strengthen your triceps, your shoulder stabilizers, and your pec muscles, as well as your abs. Now you can progress from, say, the wall over to a barbell. You can lower the barbell, say, up and down on a squat rack. So if I place this here and I lower myself down, I've got a little bit fuller range of motion because my head can go beyond, say, the base of the wall. And typically I don't have many people, say, lower themselves if they're doing any type of a pushing movement more than, say, 90 degrees of elbow flexion. And why do I do that? That's limiting your range of motion, you might say. Well, more than anything else, it's actually protecting your shoulder joint because you get a lot of carryover anyway from lowering, say, a bar down or a dumbbell down toward your chest. Unless you're a power lifter, unless you're a bodybuilder and you need to use extreme ranges of motion for, say, muscular or strength development, then it's not really necessary to, say, lower an implement like a barbell or a dumbbell too far down, because it's going to compromise the integrity of the shoulder joint and create some tightness, say, in the shoulder capsule. Most baseball players, I never have them do any type of a bench press movement, a conventional bench press movement on a bench or on an incline bench, because of the fact it's going to compromise the integrity of the shoulder joint, create a lot of posterior capsule tightness in the shoulders. So just because it's an exercise that you might think is good for you, you have to consider the implications to the joint. What type of problems might that create? Whether it's pain in the bicep tendon or creating posterior capsule tightness. That's going to, especially for overhead racket sports or throwing sports, say football, or baseball or softball, you're going to actually lose a lot of range of motion in your shoulder, and it's going to decrease the velocity, say, throwing a baseball. So you have to consider that as well. So progressing on to some more advanced pushing exercises. Push-ups would be next. You can go with modified. So progression would be from the wall to the barbell to a modified push-up on the ground. Say knees on the ground, your hands beneath your shoulders, lowering your chest down and pushing up. Lowering your chest down, pushing up completely, keeping your abs tight. Most people I see in a gym, if they're doing any type of a push-up, they tend to let their hips sag like so, and they don't push up all the way. Well, it's really important that you keep your torso in a straight line. If you're doing a modified push-up, same idea. Down, all the way up. Not halfway up, not 3/4 of the way up, but you want to push up fully so that your scapula can engage and do what it's supposed to do and protect your shoulder. Pushing up completely. Next progression from knees on the ground is a regular push-up. Down, and then push up all the way. Down, push up all the way. Now, there are a variety of different ways you can hold your arms, but for most people, I recommend that they keep their elbows closer to their rib cage because it's less traumatic to the shoulder joint. It's going to protect your shoulders, but still allow you to work your chest musculature, work your tricep musculature, work your shoulder stabilizers, and your core as well. So keep your elbows, don't let your elbows flare out so much like so, but keep them a little bit tighter to your body. Keep your head in front of the plane of your fingertips, not way out in front of you. And the other thing you want to consider is lowering yourself. Think about lowering your sternum, not leading with your chin. A lot of people, when they want to do a push-up, they're leading with their chin, so they get this anterior head tilt going on. It's not particularly good for your cervical spine, and you're really kind of defeating the purpose of the exercise. It's a form of cheating. So keep that in mind. So a variety of different push-ups that you can do. There are rotational push-ups or dumbbell push-up with rows, all kinds of different push-ups. In terms of something that might be a little bit more functional in nature, you could even take a medicine ball and offset yourself, like so, where one hand is on the ball, one hand's on the ground. So more of the load is going to be taken up by the hand that's on the ground. Just another variation of a push-up. You can even take the ball and you can switch over to the other side and go back and forth. It's going to add a little bit more of a cardio component. Your shoulder stabilizers have to work a little bit harder when doing something a little bit more dynamic with, say, a medicine ball. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about some more advanced exercises using a barbell. I'm going to talk about the basics surrounding a barbell bench press because most people don't understand functionally how things are supposed to work. One of the things that you need to consider is the movement in your scapula and your mid-back. So if I'm going to lie on my back or on the floor or any type of a bench, you want to think about allowing your scapula to adduct. That means that you want movement where when you're lowering your arms down, the scapula are going to move in immediately towards your spine. And that's really important. See, a lot of people, and I've had people that have come into us here at Body Symmetry that I have to do an assessment on, and their scapula does not want to move on either side. It's like it's fixed. It's locked in. So the problem with that is that you get a lot of grinding in the joint and things don't work as fluidly as possible. A lot of bicep tendonitis issues. So you want to make sure that your shoulder blades glide on the bench, that they come in, they adduct, and then they abduct, they go out. They come in and then they go out at the same time. So you should feel your shoulder blades moving beneath you on the bench or on the floor if you're doing a floor press. So I'm going to lie on my back here, position myself underneath the bar. The setup is really critical too. You want to make sure that you drive your feet into the ground as hard as you can. You want to make sure that you set your glutes firmly. You want to contract your abs. I should not be able to come up here. If a person came up and nudged me or tried to push me off the bench, I'm so rigid on the bench that I'm not going to move. And that's really important. So you really want to create a lot of tension on the bench, drive your feet into the ground to create a really stable base. That's going to help you to push the load away from you. It's going to give you more strength. Hand position is also an important consideration on a barbell. By varying your grip, if you have healthy shoulders, that is, it's going to hit different muscle fibers. A wider grip is going to be more of the outer pectoral region if you're on a flat bench. If you have a narrow grip and or a close grip, it's more tricep and more medial or the midline, middle pectoral region. So depending on your sport or depending on your goals and our area of focus, you can change the grip. I personally use a medium grip or a medium width grip in relationship to my shoulders. Slightly wider than my shoulders. I'll use an overhand closed grip where my thumb comes around the bar. Some people, like a lot of powerlifters, will use a suicide grip, which is an open grip where the bar could roll off because you're not locking your thumb underneath. And that is potentially dangerous. So some people feel like they're able to push more with a suicide grip. I think it's not a safe idea. So grabbing the bar is critical in terms of grip strength. And you want to make sure that the bar is loaded through the forearm. So your wrist should be completely straight, not cocked back like this where the load sits here back on your hand, but where the load sits on the palm of your hand. So you're grabbing the bar, it kind of looks like this. So the forces are going to go through the forearm, down into the shoulder, and you're going to be able to carry the load more efficiently, and it's going to allow you, you're going to be actually stronger in that position as well. So then I'm going to pick the bar up, or if you have a spotter, which is ideal, I'll create a little bit of an arch in my lower back to push my rib cage back. I'll lower the bar down, keep my elbows fairly tight, and then I'll push up. And usually I push up in a straight line or slightly back. So elbows down at your sides and push up. The other thing to consider is speed of movement. So if I'm working with somebody who wants to focus more on, say, dynamic strength, which involves, it's more of a power base, you have to use submaximal load. So if I know that, say, I can bench press 300 pounds, I'm typically not going to use anywhere much more than, say, 50–60% of my 1 repetition max. So that would be roughly 150 pounds. When you're working on speed, you're working on different muscle fibers, and you have to use a submax load. So for me, this is about half the amount that I can max bench press, so I could use this on a dynamic day if I'm working on speed. Say I'm doing 8 sets of 2 reps, where I'm just focused on moving the bar as quickly as I can up. And that's going to help with force development as I become stronger and I use heavier loads, say more on a max effort day. Then I'm going to be able to use more speed when moving a heavier weight. So a lot of people use the same amount of weight, the same rep scheme all the time. What I'm telling you is that it's important to vary your rep scheme, to vary your loads, how much weight you're using, and the speed that you move those loads. So I may have one day that I'm doing pushing exercises with a barbell where it's more my speed day or my dynamic day, where I'm trying to move submaximal loads, typically 40–60% of my 1 repetition max, as quickly as possible, and I'm typically not doing more than, say, 2 reps, but I'm doing more sets, 8 to 10 sets. My rest intervals might be 45 to 60 seconds, just long enough so I can recover and go back to moving that load as quickly as possible. And that's going to help with your overall power, so that when you're working, say, a heavier day, a strength day, or a max effort day, then you can use heavier loads and move those loads faster, and your strength will actually move upward. So that's something to consider in terms of programming. Reps, sets, and loads. It's an important consideration. A little bit of an art form, a lot to think about. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different things that you could do involving accommodating resistance, where you can take bands and chains, like I'm demonstrating right now, and use those as a tool to help with your strength. Now, accommodating resistance is essentially helping you kind of beat the strength curve. Most people, when they're doing an exercise, they have an area, say in the strength and the curve of the movement, where they're strong and or weak. So you can manipulate those variables by making your weak area stronger by using different tools. And what I'm using here, I'm using, say, chains. So the chains, this is a form of accommodating resistance. When I'm lowering the bar down, it's heavier up top, but as I lower the bar down, the lower part of the movement is typically the hardest part of the movement. So the chains actually deload. Each chain weighs about 14 pounds. And as the chain deloads, it's easier at the bottom, but when I push up, the chain is actually unloading and making it more difficult for me at the top. And typically without the chains, you're stronger at the top where you're almost locked out. This is just the opposite. Because the chains are unloading, it's actually adding weight towards the top, therefore making it harder. So this is the way, accommodating resistance is simply a way that you can kind of trick your body into working, making your weak areas, weak points stronger. Just another tool in the toolbox. So you'll set yourself up, you'll see what happens with the chains. Usually you want a couple of links on the ground when your elbows are fully extended. Lower the weight down and then fire up. And you can see how the chains at the very top are almost completely off the ground. And therefore at this position, this is the heaviest point. So down, it's lightening. And as I push up, it's getting heavier. So again, this is a form of accommodating resistance. You can add as many changes you want based on where you are in your training program. It's a great tool in the toolbox. So another form of accommodating resistance is using bands. We'll take either dumbbells, we'll either take plates and or kettlebells. These are 20-pound kettlebells. I've got super bands wrapped around them. And I'm going to place the super bands, the bands on the bar, and you can see how they bounce. They're unstable. So by doing this, the instability is actually going to create more stability in your shoulder joints. I know it sounds kind of weird, but you have to keep yourself so stable and so set on the bench because of how the bands are causing the kettlebells to swing, that it really forces you to use more muscle fibers to perform the exercise. So this is a great way to get more out of your body by using something that's slightly unconventional. To again create more stability through the shoulders and get more out of your body in terms of strength if you're trying to get stronger with your pushing exercises. So everything is essentially the same, but you just have to make sure that when you do this, you're really set on the bench, really firing your abs, driving your heels into the ground, making sure that you're pushing your shoulder blades into the bench, but allowing your shoulder blades to glide like I talked about previously. So you can see how the kettlebells want to move around. We'll lower the weight. And you have to be careful with the speed with this and the line of the movement of the bar. So that's the barbell bench press using bands with kettlebells. Fun exercise. Reps, sets on something like this in terms of your load. I typically don't, unless you have a spotter, you want to be very careful with the amount of load. Usually I'll make this a sub-max exercise where I'm not using maximal loads, but loads that I can handle, for maybe rep schemes of 3 to 5. So I'm not doing a ton of reps. I'm not working on, say, a repetitive effort or a hypertrophy day. I'm worried more about strength and my stabilizers and my shoulders working. So my rotator cuff muscles are working really hard to stabilize my shoulder. My scap stabilizers are really working hard. Your neutralizers, stabilizers, your agonist and antagonist muscles are really all firing in conjunction to allow you to do this exercise. So it's, again, another tool in the toolbox. All right, next, I've got just a few minutes left. I want to show you some exercises you can do on the floor. I like doing floor presses with dumbbells and with a barbell because it allows you to really protect that shoulder joint, which is really important for a lot of people. Some people found that they can't do, say, a dumbbell bench press or a barbell bench press, but they can do a floor press because the floor will limit your range of motion. It's also great for starting strength. And what do I mean by that? It means from the strength from the ground up. So if I'm taking a barbell or a dumbbell with one hand, I'm lowering the elbow down to the ground. I'm completely stopped. So I have to start from the bottom up. It's a lot more drive, a lot more core activation. And again, it's just a different exercise that's going to hit your muscle fibers in a different way. So I'm going to fire my abs as hard as I can. Because I'm asymmetrically loaded, that means I'm only holding one dumbbell, my body wants to roll to the left. So my abdominal muscles have to fully engage to allow me to stay on the ground without tipping over, especially if your loads are pretty heavy. Same idea, keep your elbow at a nice healthy position that feels comfortable for you. And you're going to push straight up. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic. Now you can also use a kettlebell. A kettlebell adds a different twist. whether the kettlebell is bottom up or the bottom is down. I'm going to take my watch off and let me show you this. So if I really want to work my shoulder stabilizers big time and my core big time, I'm going to hold the kettlebell with the bottom up, all right? You can see how it's moving around in my hand. I really have to grip very firmly, but my rotator cuff muscles have to work that much harder because of the instability factor. So you typically have to use a submax load with a bottom up, kettlebell bottom up floor press. Same idea with the dumbbell in terms of core stability, but a little bit harder, a little bit more work, just a different training effect altogether. I can typically use heavier loads if I'm using the kettlebell with it down. Completely different than bottom up. I could probably use 30–40% more weight with the bottom of the kettlebell down versus up. So I gave you a lot of different options in terms of exercise, and I hope I was able to share with you some things about protecting your shoulders and shoulder health. If you want to keep pushing, you've got to protect those shoulders. If you have any questions about what we do here at Body Symmetry, please give us a call and check out our website. Definitely go to this website, freefitnessvideos.com. We have over 700 exercises in our database. So if you want to learn something about exercise, about fitness, check out the website. Thanks again for joining me on another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Marschik. Hey, Quinn and Riley.